medical work, and I said, enough. She revitalized PSR at the time, and at the very time that 3 Mile Island happened. And that gave her immediate visibility in the United States as sort of a prophetess who predicted the event, because she took out an ad in the New England Journal of Medicine the week before predicting that some accident will happen. Now, she was then intent on making nuclear power the prime aspect of the agenda of IPP. There was no IPPNW, of PSR. And I was opposed to that. And so we had a meeting right here from where I'm talking to you, which is 194 Hobart Road, Newton. Okay? And that's where PSR was founded in 1960-61. All our meetings took place here. So she got a young folks who were very devoted. She was extraordinarily charismatic, and they would have walked on hot coals for a Helen. And I got together my old fogies, gray-haired, older people who were active with me in the 60s. And it seemed clear to us that the nuclear arms race was accelerating. In effect, the world had by that time accumulated nearly 16,000 megatons of nuclear destructiveness. That's an awesome figure, because all of World War II, all the weapons, the explosives or whatever used, the ordnance was 11 megatons. Now we had 16,000. And it was about to increase with the Reagan era. And the whole system was unstable. And it was clear that this was the great threat, not nuclear power at the time. And therefore and I was always convinced that to be effective, you gotta focus. And for a small, poor, progressive organization to get diffused, they have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and opposed to arsenic, and opposed to smoking, and opposed to AIDS, or this or that, whatever. And it diffuses energy. You have to focus. You have to focus on an issue and bring all your resources to bear to affect public opinion. Because any progressive knows that they're isolated from the public. They have no clear venue to address the public. And that breakthrough takes genius, and that's what IPPNW possessed, really. But to go back to Helen and the issue you raised, we called together a meeting. There were about 20, 25 people, and she was adamant, and so was I. And we both of us argued and argued. And then one person, Dr. Eric Chivian, psychiatrist, yeah, right, he suggested, why don't we hold a meeting dealing with nuclear war and nuclear weapons? She says, nobody will show up. And she said, I would not be associated with something like that. So we pleaded with her, let's have a meeting like that and test the waters. Well, Eric and others organized such a meeting at Harvard. We rented a small hall that could hold about 150 people. And 1,000 showed up. 1,000 showed up.
We should be so lucky tomorrow.
There was enormous terror in the atmosphere, in the air. People were aware of it. And this is something that she did not sense. But Helen was an ultimate political animal, really. At that meeting, she wouldn't lend her name to the program. She was sitting there so angry, I thought she was going to have a heart attack. She wasn't one of the speakers. But at the end of the program, she jumped to the stage and says, I heard enough talk. Let's us engage in action. I would suggest we get an ad in the New York Times, and I'm raising now $25,000. And within an hour, she had $25,000. And she took out an ad in the New York Times, News of the Week in Review, a letter to both Brezhnev and Carter. And that gained wide currency. So we differ then, and we differ throughout the IPPNW era. And she did something at Early House. You ought to read the book. I'm trying to be fair because I have a lot of anger against her. And I'm trying to get out of this anger mode and get into the objective mode. But she, at Early House, pushed very hard for IPPNW to be an intellectual research organization, where I was pushing for it to be an activist, grassroots organization. That was bizarre, because Helen was radical, activist, and she wanted that. Why that happened? You read the book, come to your own conclusion. Now, to go back to the nuclear energy issue, I think nuclear energy is a bad thing. Okay? Number one. Because it's expensive, and Wall Street, the reason I know it's expensive is Wall Street isn't ready to invest. You have to get government to subsidize. And unfortunately, Obama just invested $8 billion in 2 nuclear plants in Florida. And once he invests, corporate business will jump in because there's no risk. The risk will be taken over by the U.S. government. And the issues against that, so I won't go into it. Why nuclear energy? Because fundamentally, in an age that is unstable, you don't want to make available radioactive resources that lend themselves to terrorist activity or whatever. Secondly, a more deeper issue, we have never resolved the issue of how to deal with nuclear waste. And that being the case, there's so many ways to promote clean energy. Why go that route?
Exactly.
Right.
So I think that from the point of view of Canadian doctors physicians for global survival, right?
Good.
I think that you have to select what issues are supported by your members and feel deeply about. But I wish they'd feel deeply about the nuclear issue as a weapon, because that runs so antithetic to everything doctors stand for. It's the opposite of life. And to me, it's deeper than that. To me, it's Hitlerism.